They say the desert remembers what the wind forgets. Long before sand swallowed cities and time were the bones of kings to dust, there rose a boy upon a golden throne. His name was wrapped in prophecy and shadow, a name meant to be spoken only. Beneath the sun, he was 17, and the sun had just begun to notice him. The morning of his coronation arrived heavy with silence. No birds sang, no priests chanted, only the low hush of the wind weaving through the palace pillars. He stood alone in the high tower of the palace, watching the horizon bleed orange and gold as the sun lifted from the dunes like a judgment. The boy did not cry. He had not cried since his father, Pharaoh, slayer of Nubians, beloved of Ra, collapsed during the night and died with blood on his lips and eyes wide open, staring at something no one else could see. His father's death was quick, too quick. The priests called it divine will. But in the boy's chest, a fear twisted like rope drawn tight. The crown that once crushed men beneath its gold now waited on a stone altar before him. No one dared touch it, not even the high seer. Your father is with the gods, the old man said, head bowed low. Now the gods will speak to you. But the gods had already begun speaking. He first heard the voice the night after the funeral. In the blackness of his chamber, the air thick with incense and whispers, he dreamt of fire raining over the Nile, of pyramids melting under an angry sun. In the dream, he stood on the edge of the world, and from the sky came a voice, thunderous, burning, yet heartbreakingly calm. Your blood is not clean. It remembers the pact. He awoke sweating, chest heaving, eyes wide in the torchlight. Servants ran in, but he waved them away. That voice stayed with him like smoke in the lungs. Later, that week, as he sat alone on his father's throne, a place too wide, too cold, his fingers traced the carved lion heads on the arms. His hand caught something. Beneath the cushion was a crack, and inside it, a thin bronze disc, carved with the rays of the sun and dried red along the edges. Blood. He held it in the light. The disc hummed, ever so faintly. He took it to the temple, where only the oldest priests were permitted to read sacred objects. One elder, blind in both eyes, trembled upon touching it. This is no offering. It is a key, he whispered. A key to what? The old man turned his face toward the boy king, and though his eyes were white, his expression was stricken with ancient terror. A door that should never open again, atop the palace rooftop. He often escaped to think, there, away from ears and eyes. He watched the sun arc through the sky like a blade, and he began to talk to it, not prayers, not commands, just conversations. He asked the sun why it had chosen him, why it killed his father in silence, why the people bowed but never smiled, and sometimes the sun seemed to answer, not with words, but with feelings, with warmth that grew to hot too quickly, with birds that dropped from the sky mid-flight, with dreams that turned to ash before he could wake. One afternoon, while walking the palace gardens alone, a child servant approached him. She carried water and dates. She could not have been older than 10. She looked up at him, eyes solemn. Is it true? She asked softly. He knelt. Is what true, little one? That the Pharaoh's family once made a promise to the fire god, and broke it. His breath caught. Who told you that? She shrugged. My grandmother. She says the sun burns those who lie. Before he could ask more, the girl was whisked away by a passing official, scolded and warned never to speak again. But her words stayed. In the lowest halls of the palace, beneath the libraries and priest chambers, there was a forgotten chamber, sealed behind a false wall. It had not been opened in 3 generations. But the boy had watched the servants' footsteps, counted their glances, found the crack. Inside, dust swirled like spirits in the torchlight. Scrolls lined the walls, not the kind sung in ceremonies. These were darker, older. One scroll, brittle as dead leaves, unrolled in his hands. The language was archaic, but he could read it, the tongue of the ancestors, taught to every air. When Ra is devoured, the sky shall cry blood, the tomb beneath the sun shall rise, and the child of light must choose, burn for the world, or let the world burn. The boy's hands trembled. This wasn't just prophecy. It was warning. That evening, the boy sat in silence before his father's statue. It towered over the courtyard, a god-made stone. "Did you know?" he asked the statue. "Did you know you passed something cursed into me?" The stone did not reply, but from the shadows, a voice did. "I warned him," came the rasp. The boy turned. A figure stepped forward, old, cloaked in linen, blindfolded in black. The same architect who had built his father's burial tomb. "They always think they can contain fire," the architect whispered. "But fire was never meant to be contained." "What did he hide?" the boy asked. The old man smiled. "But it was a broken thing." "Not what?" "Who?" The sun set blood-red that day, and even the birds refused to fly. He could feel it now. Something, buried in the sands. Something ancient, waiting. And for the first time in his young, gold-laced life, the Pharaoh no longer feared death. He feared what came before it. In the catacombs beneath the palace, where time lay tangled like cobwebs, the boy king descended with only a single torch and a name. Ka-Hotep. The royal architect. The one who had built the tombs of kings, carved stone into gods, and vanished from the court the day Pharaoh Mekher died. Some called him mad. Others whispered he had seen too much. But all agreed. Kohotep knew. He was found deep beneath the temple of stars, where even the priests feared to walk. The guards who had searched for him had refused to follow past the third gate. They claimed their torches blew out without wind, that something watched them from within the stone. But the Pharaoh pressed on. He followed the twisting stairwell of salt-white limestone until the scent of age and earth thickened into something like breath. And there, in a chamber that pulsed with silence, sat the architect cross-legged, blindfolded, head bowed to the floor. "You come as your father did," Kohotep rasped before the Pharaoh could speak. "Too proud. Too late." The boy stood, silent, torchlight flickering across his young, tense face. "I found the scroll," he said. Kohotep did not lift his head. "Then you know the curse." "I know it begins beneath the pyramid." Kohotep gave a hoarse chuckle. "Beneath the pyramid is only the end. Once, long ago, before temples bore the names of kings and obelisks drank the sun's shadow, a pact was made." That's how Kohotep told it. Voice thin as papyrus, words unraveling like smoke. "There was a drought. Not a normal one, but a divine punishment. The sky cracked, crops died. The Nile retreated like a wounded beast. The people begged their gods for mercy, and a voice answered, not from the heavens, from beneath. It called itself Ras-Arif." Kohotep whispered, "Not the sun, but what burns behind it." The Pharaoh at that time, a cruel man whose name was struck from all stones, made a deal. He would offer blood in exchange for rain, his own son. The rains came. The kingdom prospered, but the boy's soul did not rest. His spirit became fire, his name forbiddance. His tomb sealed beneath the earth, far below the largest pyramid, encased in gold and stone and spales too dark to repeat aloud. "That is what your father found," Kohotep said. "That is what he disturbed." The young Pharaoh's heart beat louder than the torch flame. "Then it's true," he breathed. "He awakened the fire god." Kohotep shook his head slowly. "No, child. He only knocked. You are the one who will open." The boy returned to his palace a changed man. He looked the same, tall for his age, narrow eyes like inked hawk feathers, jaw clean but set with quiet fury. Yet something shifted behind his gaze. The wind seemed to follow him. The sun burned hotter above his head. Servants walked slower around him now, averting their eyes longer than before. That night, he sent everyone away, even his guards. He entered the high temple alone. Within the hall of carvings, he stood before a giant slab of polished basalt etched with the story of his birth. But now he knew the truth. The carvings were a lie, a veil. He touched the sun carved into the stone. The basalt trembled under his hand. A crack whispered across its face. A pulse surged through the floor. And the voice returned, not in dreams, in daylight, in waking thought, curling like fire through his spine. "You are close." Later, That week, beneath the guise of night, the pharaoh returned to the old scroll chamber with a trusted companion, a sharp-eyed scribe named Ameni. She was older than him by 10 years, a brilliant scholar with a blade hidden in her robes, and a scar she never spoke of. He showed her the scroll. She read it in silence, lips moving. Then her eyes lifted to his, storm-filled. Why was this never destroyed? Because even fire fears what it cannot burn. Ameni nodded once. Then, I'll walk with you, but I won't lie for you. He half smiled. Then you're the only one I can trust. Together, they poured through the forgotten library, pulling loose stones, deciphering forgotten glyphs. And soon, they found it, a crude map hand-drawn, burned at the edges, hidden behind an old idol of Anubis. It showed a secret path, descending from beneath the pyramid's northern base. Not the known passages, something deeper. Hidden beneath generations of stone, there was writing across the top. Not Egyptian, not any language either of them recognized. But when the pharaoh held the sun disk he had found under his father's throne over the writing, it glowed and the letters changed. Men, I gasped as the words were formed. To enter is to become is to burn. That night, Ameni asked him plainly, do you believe you are the one the prophecy speaks of? He didn't answer right away. The moon cast his face in silver shadow as he stood near the reflecting pool of the palace. His reflection was fractured by ripples, as if the water did not wish to see him clearly. I don't know what I believe, he said at last. But the dreams keep coming. She looked at him closely. What do they say? He closed his eyes. They say, I am not whole. That part of me is buried, and if I find it, I will either save the kingdom or destroy it. Ameni's voice was a whisper. Then we must be very sure which part of you is meant to rise. Outside the walls of the palace, the desert waited, hot, endless, alive. The northern face of the Great Pyramid glimmered under the stars like the blade of a buried sword, and somewhere beneath it, a tomb sealed in silence, filled with the memory of betrayal and the promise of flame, waited to open. The pharaoh no longer feared the voice in his dreams. He feared what it would show him. Next, they waited for the moon to rise high, when even the cobras slept. A royal chariot, cloaked in black linen, moved across the desert like a ghost, wheels muffled by sand. Inside rode the pharaoh, silent, cloaked, eyes darker than the sky. At his side, Ameni. Behind them, to hand-picked guards, warriors loyal not by gold or fear, but by blood debt. They reached the northern face of the Great Pyramid without a whisper of alarm. The guards pulled aside a wall of reeds and brush, revealing a half-buried shaft, ancient, narrow, sealed with limestone and symbols lost to time. This was not a path meant for kings. This was a wound in the earth, a forgotten mouth, and tonight it would open. The passage was choked with dust and the weight of centuries. Their torches hissed in the stale air, casting nervous shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Hieroglyphs covered the stone, but they were strange, twisted versions of the sacred signs, written backward like language through a mirror. He who walks downward becomes less man and more memory. The soul must break before the fire can enter. Only the blood-marked may pass. The pharaoh pressed his thumb to the edge of the sun disk and sliced it open with a flint shard. Blood touched gold. The disk warmed in his palm. The stones beneath their feet shifted. With a deep groan, the slab in front of them lowered into the ground. The tomb opened. Inside, the silence was not empty. It was watching. They moved carefully through the narrow corridor, past statues of unknown gods, creatures with too many arms, faces covered in flame, symbols carved over their mouths to silence them. The walls flickered gold, but the color was not paint. The corridor was lined with thin plates of metal, inscribed with warnings. At the far end stood a chamber, perfectly square, no windows, no exits. At its center, a sarcophagus of black stone, carved. Onto its lid was a sun swallowing a man. The pharaoh stepped forward alone. Ameni reached out. Wait, but he was already there. His fingers traced the symbols around the lid. Not seals, bindings, Don't touch it, she whispered. I have to, he said. The voice in his mind had returned, clearer than ever, calm, gentle. I have waited for your hands. He pressed the disc into the center of the lid. For a moment, nothing. Then light. The room ignited in gold. Their torches extinguished, yet they saw everything, not with their eyes, with something deeper. The walls breathed. The lid of the sarcophagus shifted. Stone scraped stone. The lid slid open, not by force, but by invitation. Inside lay a figure, perfect, untouched. Young, not a skeleton, not wrapped in bandages, a body, alive. It wore a headdress nearly identical to the Pharaoh's. Its chest rose and fell ever so faintly. Its skin shimmered with gold dust. And its eyes, shut tight, twitched as if dreaming. And then, they opened. Black, endless, they met the Pharaoh's, and they spoke without sound. You are my echo. The Pharaoh staggered back. Imeni drew her blade, trembling. One guard stepped forward, but light burst from the coffin, a blinding, pure column that flared through the room. The other guard screamed as his skin blackened, then vanished, incinerated in an instant. Imeni pulled the Pharaoh behind her, but the light was gone as fast as it came. The body in the sarcophagus was still again, eyes closed, breath silent. Only the scent of burnt flesh remained. They fled. No one spoke until they had returned to the open desert. The wind hit their faces like salvation. One guard gone. Burned to ash. No sound, no strike, just fire that knew its name. The Pharaoh dropped to his knees. The sand did not welcome him. It was cold beneath his hands. I saw myself, he whispered. Not a vision, not a trick. It was me. Imeni knelt beside him. Not you, she said softly. Something wearing your face. Something that remembers what you forgot. He looked up at her, eyes wide. How is that possible? She looked back at the pyramid. In the old stories, gods were masks made of memory. Maybe one never took his off. The palace was different when they returned, quieter, colder, as if the walls themselves had heard what happened. The servants watched, the Pharaoh with new fear in their eyes. The priests began to fast and chant long into the night. Word spread fast. The Pharaoh had entered a forbidden tomb, and the gods had punished a man by fire, but no one dared accuse him. Not yet. That night, alone in his chamber, the Pharaoh watched, the stars through the ceiling's open lattice. The fire god did not speak, but the dreams returned. He stood in the same chamber, beneath the pyramid. But this time, there were hundreds of bodies like his, all lying in perfect rows, breathing softly in gold. All dreaming. A voice whispered, the line of kings is long, but it must burn down to one. He awoke in sweat, and outside, for the first time in 100 years, the Nile had stopped flowing. The Nile stood still, not low, not dry. Still, like glass, like a mirror too afraid to move. Fishermen screamed. Priests dropped their offerings, and across the villages of the Black Land, whispers began to rise like vultures over the desert. The Pharaoh had broken the sun. Inside the palace walls, unease rotted into fear. Crops wilted within days. The sun no longer warmed, it scorched. Children broke into sweats under moonlight. The people began to cover their heads not out of reverence, but terror. And yet, no wind, no storms, no clouds. Just the silence of a sky watching, waiting. In the temple of Ra, the high priests chanted until their throats bled. Incense turned to smoke too quickly. Flames burned blue, then vanished. The Pharaoh stood before them, still robed in black, the gold sun disk heavy at his side. They say I've angered the gods, he said. The high seer stepped forward. His lips cracked, his eyes rimmed with red. No, Majesty, you have summoned them. That night, the voice returned. Not in a dream. Awake, real, you opened the gate. But balance must be paid. He stood alone on the palace rooftop, the wind dead, the stars hiding. What do you want from me? He whispered. The voice sighed through him. Not cruel, not warm. Sacrifice. Fire returns fire. He fell to his knees. His hands trembled. His mind flashed back to the sarcophagus, the perfect, silent mirror of himself lying beneath the world. What am I? You are the ending of the line. By morning, rumors flooded the capital. Priests had vanished in the night. Crops turned to black dust overnight. An eclipse began without warning and ended before anyone could scream. The people gathered before the palace, not to cheer, to demand, restore the river. Return the balance. You are not Pharaoh, you are fire. And many stood at his side, blade hidden beneath her robe, face unreadable. You have to say something, she murmured. Anything. He looked out at them, his people, his burden, and for the first time, he saw them not as citizens, but as lives burning in his hands. I will go to the priests, he said. All of them. The grand temple hall had never seen a king kneel, not once, not in 500 years, but today, he did. He fell to his knees before the 37 high priests, surrounded by golden idols and sacred oils, and he begged, I have opened something I do not understand. I came seeking truth. Instead, I found shadow. Help me seal it. The oldest priest stepped forward. His voice was cold. You cannot unburn the sun. Another raised his staff. The balance has been broken. The blood has been offered. The soul must follow. The chamber grew hot, to hot. The walls began to flicker with light. The sun disk in his belt began to glow. One priest screamed. His skin peeled back before the other's eyes. Flames poured from his mouth, and he crumpled to the stone, ashen robes. The others ran. The Pharaoh stood alone, smoking light at his feet. The voice whispered, You have become the key. He returned to Ameni with blood on his hands, not from battle, but from truth. She met him in silence, and when he told her what happened, she didn't flinch. There's no going back now, she said softly. I never meant to bring this. She turned to him. But you did. A long silence. Then, what happens if you go back into the tomb? He met her eyes. Then either I burn, or everything else does. That night, he wrote a letter, not to his people. To time. To the ones who would come after, if any did. If this is read, then I am no longer. Do not follow my path. Do not seek what I sought. The fire behind the sun is not a god. It is a memory that wants to become flesh. And I was the one foolish enough to offer it a body. And so, with nothing left, he turned once more toward the pyramid. Not as a pharaoh. As an echo. The desert winds picked up as he left. For the first time in weeks, the sky churned, clouds rolled black, lightning flashed, but there was no thunder. The storm was silent. Just before the tomb, he paused. The air shimmered like water. The sand glowed faintly under his feet. Ameni placed her hand on his arm. I'll follow you, she said. He shook his head. No, if I don't come out. Seal it. She hesitated. He turned. Eyes soft now. Promise me. She looked at him for a long time. The nodded. And he descended. The tomb welcomed him like it remembered. The air did not stir. The torches he lit did not flicker. The walls, lined with metal and flame-marked stone, seemed to breathe in unison with his steps. He passed the corridor where his guard had burned. Ash still marked the ground. Beyond it, the chamber waited, unchanged. And inside the sarcophagus, the mirror still slept. But this time, the Pharaoh walked without fear. He approached the black stone box, the gold sun disk in his palm. It pulsed like a heartbeat now, warm and aching, as if it knew it was home. He placed it back into the center of the sarcophagus lid. No sound. Then the figure inside opened its eyes. Not suddenly, not with violence, like someone returning from the deepest sleep. The boy, his copy, sat up. They were the same. Every line of the face, every curve of the jaw, even the small scar on the chin, earned in childhood. But where the Pharaoh's eyes were brown, this one's eyes burned with the center of the sun. You've come, it said. The voice was his own, warmer, wiser, older. The Pharaoh swallowed. What are you? The thing smiled, not cruelly. I am what your bloodline feared. The memory of fire, the promise once buried. The Pharaoh stepped back, You're the god, he whispered. Ra Seraph. No, said the mirror. I am the flame Ra swallowed to become a god. I am what he had to seal. The chamber darkened. Stone cracked under their feet. Your father opened the path, the mirror said, but he was too afraid to walk it. You opened the door and stepped inside. The Pharaoh felt heat rise in his chest. You've cursed the Nile, he said. You've burned the crops. You demand sacrifice. No, the mirror said gently. You did that. You lit the spark. I only became what you gave me. The Pharaoh fell to his knees. His chest hurt, not from fear, but from memory. His dreams, the voices, the visions, they were not messages, they were instructions. The sun disk was never a relic. It was AMA to CHSTICK. And he had struck it. Then take me, he said, and this, burn me, and leave my people. The chamber pulsed. The mirror stood. It walked toward him, step by step, like a reflection stepping through a pool. You offer yourself. I do. To die? No, the Pharaoh said. To become what my fathers feared. The mirror stopped inches from him. Its hands reached out glowing gold now. Veins lit with ancient fire. Their palms touched. Light erupted. Not blinding, not violent. It was warm, final, forgiving. And then there was only one. Above the pyramid, the sky tore open. The storm burst, but no rain fell. Light fell. A pillar of fire struck the pyramid's peak, a beam that lit the desert horizon, turning night into sun. Villagers fell to their knees. The priests screamed prayers into the wind. Imeni, waiting just beyond the tomb, shielded her eyes and whispered, Forgive him. Free him. And in that moment, the Pharaoh ascended, not in body. In flame. The tomb collapsed. Stone shattered, swallowed by fire and ash. The desert floor buckled, and when the light vanished, there was nothing left of the hidden chamber. No sarcophagus. No disc. No king. Just sand. Still. And silent. 3 days later, the Nile flowed again. The skies cleared. Crops began to return. Children laughed again under the sun. But in every village, people told stories of the fire, of the pillar of light, of a boy king who went beneath the pyramid and never returned. One morning, at the river bank, a little girl found something half buried in the reeds, a bronze disc, cracked down the center. Still warm. She brought it to her grandmother, who looked upon it and whispered, He gave the sun back its soul. Years passed, dynasties changed, temples rose and fell, but in quiet corners of Egypt, old women still whisper by firelight, he was not the first Pharaoh. He was the last. He did not wear the crown, he became it, and when the fire god called, he answered.